This succulent is known as Crassula Springtime, and it is a hybrid from Crassula rupestris. Now, most Crassula, I believe, are from southern Africa and kind of the Cape Province area. And I have to say that Crassula are probably my favorite genus of succulents. I just really love the geometry and the symmetry of Crassula. And a lot of their hybrids and a lot of their cultivars are also really attractive. And I definitely wanted to show you this one because even though this is not a true species, it is definitely a more common variety that you could actually find in your garden centers and your garden shops. I have this growing in a little upcycled tea tin, which I absolutely adore. And I have this growing about, I would say, 1.5 feet away from my southwest facing window, and it's actually also under a little shelf. I've found that Crassula in particular are ones that like to be pulled away from a little bit more direct light. It can withstand kind of bright light, but I think it prefers a bright light screened, because if I am a little bit negligent on actually watering these, they start to pucker. And that kind of tells me that you could either pull them away and or water them more if you have them directly in the window, or pull them away and maybe water them a little less. But this particular plant has been relatively fine because, like I said, I have it pulled away from my window and it's growing under a shelf. And it looks like it might actually start developing some buds on it really soon, which I'm excited about because some of the Crassula flowers are actually really beautiful. And I've never actually seen this one in particular flower, but given that it is probably a cultivated variety, they've probably chose it for some of its flowering potential. As far as humidity goes, these guys don't need a tremendous amount of humidity whatsoever. So if you have low or moderate humidity, that's going to be perfectly fine for them. And you have it in a well-draining mix, you're really good to go, because then you could water it a little bit more thoroughly. And I water my Crassula pretty much once a week, but sometimes twice a week for the ones that I actually have directly in my southwest facing window. In the winter months, I think it's a good general rule of thumb that I just water them once every 2 weeks. But of course, I have to really observe the plant and see if it needs a little less watering or a little bit more watering. As far as propagating this plant goes, I mean, I've actually never propagated it just from the leaf, but if a stem breaks off, which is actually common with these particular plants, I found that it actually roots up relatively easily. So that is a good sign, because if you ever knock one of these over, I actually had something very similar to this called Crassula campfire, and it broke off at one of the plant swaps, and I ended up taking it from the girl, and it's kind of growing up in another pot of mine here in the southwest facing window. And that one in particular, called campfire, actually gets this really deep color red when you're actually growing it in the window. I don't know if actually this one develops any of that kind of coloration, but otherwise, I mean, if you take a look at this kind of ladder-like geometry, I think you'd probably fall in love with Crassula the same way that I've done.